This is the West Kent Radio News feature. Hello, I'm Martin Webber. Voters in Tunbridge Wells go to the polls on Thursday, the 4th of May. They'll be electing a third of the Borough Council. I'm joined now by the leader of the Conservative group, Tom Dawlings. Tom, you've been in opposition for the past year. What's your verdict on the coalition between Liberal Democrats, Labour and the Tunbridge Wells Alliance that's been running the council? How have they done?
Well, I think we left quite a few projects in the pipeline. We just completed the Southborough Town Community Centre. We'd opened the Amelia Scott. We had plans for Cranbrook Community Centre. We had plans for improving the energy efficiency of Weald Sports Centre. And I think most important, we had agreed on co-working arrangements in the town hall. And I'd say on a lot of things have stalled. We would have hoped the co-working arrangements would have been up and in place in the course of last year, and I'm not even sure they're going to be in place this year.
One of the statements made by the new coalition is that you left the council finances in a bad state and they've had to spend lots of time looking for savings. Is that true?
We didn't leave the council finances in a bad state. The council at the 31st of March, the end of the last financial year, had fixed assets of about £132 million. That included about 24 million of cash reserves. We'd run a budget surplus for many years. What we had was a revenue budget shortfall. We'd assembled the revenue budget in December and January when the Omicron variant, indicated there might be another lockdown. The right thing to do at that time seemed to be plan to draw from reserves and see what happened. There was no lockdown. Interest rates and, of course, the council and net depositors have gone up, and that means that at the end of this financial year, there will be no shortfall. In fact, there will be a surplus. Going forward, of course, there have been very significant inflationary pressures, and I think probably there is now a more structural deficit, and that's the job of the new administration to administer.
They have been increasing car parking charges and removing short-term free parking in some car parks. Isn't that a good idea that the car parks pay for themselves? And in some ways, at the moment, it's actually cheaper to go and pay for a car park than catch a bus somewhere. Isn't it right that car parking charges do rise along with inflation and cover the costs of maintaining them?
We do cover the costs of maintaining them, and we do more than cover the costs of maintaining them. They are a revenue generator for the council. I regard car park charges as and increasing them as a bit of a tax on business. What you want to do is to encourage footfall in the town. I think it's absolutely right that they should be looked at from time to time. But I think increasing them in the course of this year was an element of an overreaction to what was not really a dramatic financial issue.
On house building, the central Conservative government seems to have weakened its house building targets, which at one point seemed to be very rigid for each local authority, giving them a certain number of houses to build. Given that these targets aren't so rigid now, apparently, isn't it time to call a halt to these big plans to put thousands of houses on farmland between Capel and Tudley? Shouldn't we save that greenbelt farmland?
I'm particularly keen on saving the AONB, and Tudley, of course, is outside the AONB, although within the Greenbelt. The issue for Tunbridge...
So AONB?
Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, which makes up about 70% of the borough, which is the major problem for the borough in terms of where it should put houses, because the restrictions on the AONB are about the equivalent of national parks, and so development there is difficult to countenance. So the local plan was very much produced by a cross-party group. It is with the government inspector. The government inspector didn't like the proposal for Tudley. He felt it was insufficiently justified. And I think the issue for the Borough Council now is, do they work on creating a justification for the housing at Tudley, or do they accept that perhaps their local plan will run for a shorter period?
So is that a possibility that you think is now a good idea, given all the controversy about building and the success of the Save Capel campaign in winning support?
I'm afraid I haven't been involved with the Planning Policy Working Group for some months now. I get briefed a little bit on what the planning department are doing that, but it's not a matter I've got a really strong view on.
So just finally then, why do you think voters should put their cross against the Conservative candidates in the forthcoming local election?
Well, I think we want to give the impetus back to the programme that we left. I want to manage the finances, and I want to manage it without the hysteria that has come this year. I think there's a lot of support that we can give to the town centres. There needs to be a working with the business community to see what they want. I think it was a big mistake from the coalition to introduce increased car park fees without consultation, and that's the sort of openness that you get from the Conservative administration.
Tom Dawlings, leader of the Conservative group on Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, thank you very much. I'm joined now by Ben Chapelard of the Liberal Democrats, who's been leader of the council over the past year. Ben, how has it gone working in the past year with Labour and the Tunbridge Wells Alliance in this coalition running the council after 24 years of the council being run by the Conservatives?
I think the Borough Partnership, which is a cross-party administration of Liberal Democrats, Tunbridge Wells Alliance and Labour, has been a great success. We've managed to safeguard the finances. I'm particularly proud of the fact that we are reducing the Borough Council's CO2 emissions by 7%. We're buying 15 social housing properties. So, yeah, it's been an exciting year.
So when you came into office, there was a predicted deficit for the financial year that we're just finishing. But the Conservatives say that your response to that was hysterical. They say that you jumped too quickly into needing savings and extra revenue, jacked up car parking charges unnecessarily that hit local businesses and shops because it deterred people from going shopping. So has your reaction to the financial situation been an overreaction?
No, absolutely not. The deficit I inherited was 943,000, and for the next 5 years was predicted to get bigger and bigger, up to about £3.8 million. And you can't run a council with annual deficits.
But that was just a prediction, wasn't it? Because in actual fact, at the end of this year, there's actually been a surplus.
So we're waiting for the final figures from that financial year, but we think we might be on a surplus of 350,000. That's come through our in-year budget review, which did put up parking charges to protect the finances, so we didn't have to cut services. And that actually led to more people using car parks.
Why? Because the price went up.
The price didn't put people off. In fact, retailers are saying to us they had their best Christmas. People are staying in our car parks for longer and they're using them more often as well. So I think that's good news. The second thing with the surplus is everybody will remember we had a Prime Minister for 50 days called Liz Truss. She messed up the economy. The council putting money away for its savings actually picked up a nice interest rates at 7-8%. So that has helped plug the deficit. And sadly, the other reason is there was £1 million in staff that we couldn't recruit in that year. Now, that plugs a deficit temporarily, but we're asking council staff to do their jobs with less members of staff.
The Conservatives say that they had a lot of initiatives when they were running the council and they've stalled under this coalition. Is that true?
I think people see new leaders coming in and having to kind of raise everything down to the ground just to show they're in charge and they're more manly than their predecessors. And that's not my style. We have got a Tunbridge Wells Borough Council plan for the next 2 years. That gives us time to really look at a much more strategic plan for building a better borough for the next decade.
There was also some attention paid to a possible sell-off of town centre car parks. Can you clarify what exactly you're going to do with those?
So every year the council looks at what it owns and says, do we still need this for what we deliver for residents? That's not changed under our leadership. All we've done is been honest and saying these are the bits of property that we're looking at, and they're published in the open domain as part of our commitment to greater transparency in how we govern the council. So we will do a review of parking strategy. So as people now work from home, we need to look at whether car park demand is the same as it was. If we find that we still need all our car parks, we'll keep them. If we need more, we'll have to look at building them somewhere else. If we need less, we'll look at developing those bits of land separately. But nothing will happen until we have that car park, which will have been reviewed independently before making decisions.
On transport, we know that Tunbridge Wells has a terrible reputation for traffic jams. What projects have you been able to get off the ground in addressing that, in trying to get people onto cycleways, walking more, or onto buses?
I'm keen to encourage people to cycle and walk and leave the car at home wherever possible. So as you know, I've been trying to say to Kent County Council, let's build the cycle route between Tunbridge and Tunbridge Wells. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen because there isn't the political will at Kent County Council. Kent look after roads, so we have to work in partnership with them. But we have got funding to look at a cycle route from Rustall into Tunbridge Wells Town Centre via the Common. We have got funding for low traffic neighbourhood pilot in St John's, which is really exciting.
So this election is coming up. What would you say to people to persuade them to vote for the Liberal Democrat councillor in their particular ward?
The Liberal Democrats are standing on a manifesto of being responsible with residents' money and safeguarding the finances, grow the local economy through tourism. So we're improving the town centre. And the other one is making sure that we are greener and more sustainable. And I hope residents will trust that leadership on May the 4th and put a tick in the Liberal Democrat box.
Ben Chapelard, leader of Tunbridge Wells Borough Council from the Liberal Democrats, thank you very much.